You know, you always hear that we need modern solutions for modern problems. But what if the roadmap for a nation's future was actually written thousands of years ago? Today, we're diving into a really interesting idea. Can the ancient wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita give us a practical guide to solving Nepal's most pressing challenges? Let's find out.
The situation in Nepal is often described with this one powerful word, junjal, a tangled web, a mess of countless challenges. And you know, this isn't just a simple list of issues. It's a complex, interconnected system where every single problem feeds into the next. And that's exactly what makes it so incredibly hard to solve.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to try and untangle that web of challenges to see what we're really up against. Then, we'll turn to this ancient guide to unlock three really powerful concepts: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Samatva. And finally, we'll connect it all back to a practical plan for the future.
Okay, first up, let's really get into this web of challenges. The key here isn't just to list the problems out, but to truly understand how they're all connected. You know, how does one issue actually make another one worse? Let's take a closer look.
And right here, you can see just how tangled that web really is. I mean, think about it for a second. Political instability, which is often driven by personal gain, leads to unpredictable economic policies. Well, what does that do? It deepens inequality. At the same time, you've got an education system that focuses on memorizing facts instead of critical thinking, which makes people really vulnerable to divisive media. This, in turn, fuels social division and mistrust, which then circles right back and makes political instability even worse. It's an incredibly powerful, vicious cycle.
So when you're faced with a web this complex, where do you even begin to pull on a thread? Well, the argument we're exploring today is that maybe we need to stop just looking at the symptoms and start looking at the mindset behind them. And the proposed framework, it comes from a pretty surprising place: the ancient philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita.
And this, right here, is the absolute core of the idea. The problem isn't just about fixing broken institutions or writing better laws, it's actually much deeper than that. The argument is that the real root of the problem lies in our collective mindset, our ethics. So if we want true, lasting change, it has to start from within each and every one of us.
So the Gita offers these three core principles as tools. Think of them as keys to guide this change in consciousness. We're going to explore Karma Yoga, which is the path of selfless action, Jnana Yoga, the path of reason, and Samatva, the path of balance. And let's be super clear here. We're looking at these not as religious dogma, but as practical, powerful tools for changing society.
All right, let's start with Karma Yoga. This one is all about completely redefining our relationship with work and duty, especially for people in public service, where the impact of their actions is felt by absolutely everyone.
So what in the world is Karma Yoga? Well, it's a radical shift in focus. It means you forget about the potential results, the promotion, the profit, the election win. Instead, you focus purely on your duty, your kartavya, and on performing it to the absolute best of your ability. The work itself, when it's done well, becomes the reward.
I mean, this comparison really says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got result-oriented thinking, just chasing personal gain, and that leads to things like crumbling bridges and totally broken public trust. But on the right, when you're devoted to your duty, to Karma Yoga, the focus is completely on the public good. You build things that actually last, and you strengthen the integrity of our institutions from the inside out.
Here is a perfect real-world example. Imagine a politician who chooses to invest in a long-term water project that's going to serve the community for decades, instead of some flashy, short-term project that just gets them good press for the next election. That is Karma Yoga in action. It's putting your duty to the people way ahead of any personal reward. Next up, we have Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge and reason. Now, remember that flawed education system and divisive media we talked about earlier? Well, this is the direct antidote. In our age of constant misinformation, this principle is absolutely crucial for making sound, effective policy.
Jnana Yoga is essentially the practice of intellectual discipline. It's about having the courage to put aside those emotional impulses, the rumors flying around, and partisan dogma, and instead commit to making decisions based on facts, on data, and on rigorous, honest analysis.
And just look at the difference it makes. Emotion-driven decisions, they lead to these quick, flawed fixes that often just make things worse and fuel even more polarization. But the path of Jnana Yoga, the one that's based on evidence, allows us to create effective, sustainable solutions and fosters a culture of informed, healthy public debate.
Let's take unemployment, for example.
The easy, emotional response is to just hand out a bunch of training certificates and call it a day. But the Jnana Yoga approach demands so much more. It requires us to do the hard work, a deep, data-driven analysis of the entire labor market to find a solution that's actually going to work for the long term.
Okay, our final principle, samatha-srema, is all about balance. And believe me, it acts as a direct antidote to the emotional extremism and the polarization that we see absolutely everywhere in our public discourse today.
Samatha is really the art of equanimity. It's the ability to remain stable and composed whether you're met with success or failure, praise or criticism. Now, for leaders who are facing constant public scrutiny, and for all of us as citizens engaging in debate, this kind of mental balance is beyond crucial.
So, here's the crucial point. Without samatva, disagreement very quickly spirals into destructive conflict. But with samatva, that exact same disagreement can become a constructive dialogue. It literally transforms public discourse from a battlefield into a forum for actual progress, strengthening the very fabric of our democracy.
And this is what samatva actually looks like in a democracy. It's about choosing debate and the legal process over insults and violence. It's a commitment to channeling disagreement into something productive, instead of just letting it explode into hatred.
So we have these three incredibly powerful principles: selfless duty, evidence-based reason, and emotional balance. But, they can't just be abstract ideas. How do we actually translate them into a concrete, actionable plan for real-world change?
And here is the roadmap that puts these principles into practice. It all starts with education reform to build critical thinking. Hey, that's Jnana Yoga in our schools. It calls for government transparency so leaders are truly accountable. That's Karma Yoga in public service. It requires media responsibility to fight misinformation, and it builds a sustainable economy. It also empowers local communities to create change from the ground up and ensures access to mental health. You see, each step is a practical application of the wisdom we've been talking about.
Which, of course, leads to the ultimate question. With so much to do, with a challenge this massive, so where do we even begin?
And here is the answer, the central thesis of this entire analysis. We begin with ourself. Public reform and personal change are not two separate projects. They are two sides of the very same coin. They have to happen together. Societal transformation is simply impossible without individual transformation.
So, in the end, this really isn't about treating the Gita like some dusty, ancient relic. It's about using its wisdom as a living, breathing, practical toolkit, a guide for building a more responsible life for ourselves, and through that, building a more just, stable, and prosperous future for everyone.